Good morning. Oh, that was weak. Good morning. Much better, much better. It's great to see everyone here this morning. And if your nose is working, you can tell there was some eating going on up at the building yesterday. And I hope everybody had a enjoyable time. Some of the sick that we need to keep in our prayers, Brother Clonch handed me a note that said Joanne. Is it Joanne or Joanna? Joanne or Joanna? Joanne Young, a neighbor of theirs, is in Jackson Hospital due to complications of COVID. So said this is the second time she's been in the hospital recently. And apparently not able to eat much or lost a lot of weight down to less than 100 pounds. So need to keep her in our thoughts and prayers. Also keep Brother Terry in your prayers. He's got an appointment Tuesday. Seems like kidney stones are starting to aggravate him again. So make sure we keep him in our prayers. Keep Brother Jeremy also. He was here yesterday, but he was kind of the old Southern saying we use. He was stove up. He fell yesterday and banged up a knee, and that's getting more and more frequent, isn't it? Oh, there you go. So just make sure we keep over. Is there anyone else that we need to think about at this time? I knew that and forgot it. Myra's having surgery on her foot Thursday. It's tomorrow she goes in for the COVID test, and then scheduled for foot surgery Thursday, and said she was going to be off her foot for a minimum of 2 weeks. I'll put it that way, because I've had that kind of, if all goes well, she'll be off of it with zero weight on it for 2 weeks. They're going to have to do some cutting on the bottom of the foot. And so make sure we keep her in our prayers. Anyone else? Brother Cox, would you lead us in a prayer, please?
Heavenly Father, we're so thankful today for the blessings that you bestow upon us. We're so thankful for being able to assemble ourselves together here without any fear of harm. Heavenly Father, be with us this morning as we study your word. I pray that you would be with us. We ask that we might rightly divide your word, that we might grow stronger in you each day. Heavenly Father, we're always thankful for the blessings you provide from day to day. Continue to be thankful for those things that you have given us. Be with us this morning as we study this prayer. We'll pray in Christ's name.
And I know a lot of folks yesterday told Jason how appreciative they were of all the work that was done for the meal yesterday, but appreciate it. Today we're going to be talking about Jehu and Athaliah. And we'll take Jehu first, and because that's the way it's lined up in the Bible, verse chapter 10 and then chapter 11, the way they fall. But who exactly is Jehu? We've talked about him before. We talked about him last week. Who is Jehu? King of Israel. You said new king of Israel. That was last week. He was new king, right? How did he get to be king of Israel? And we're talking about the northern tribes now, the 10 tribes of the north. How did he get to be king? Technically, God made him king, and who was given the instructions to so anoint? I'll give you a hint. It starts with an E, and Elijah is dead. So Elisha had been told to to appoint him king. What happened after he became king? Well, who was king when he was appointed king? Joram was the king. Now, Jehu was not family relation to Joram. He was appointed, as we've said many times before in this class, that the northern tribe never kept a lineage going that way. They changed several times. So when God told Elisha to appoint Jehu, that was not in the family line. So what was one of the first things that Jehu did after he was appointed king of the northern tribes? What normally happens in that region of the world when there's a squabble going on about who's going to be in power? Some strong kill, or somebody kills somebody, right? So one of the first things Jehu did was kill Joram, get him out of the way. What was the next thing that he did? Pardon? Kill family members, particularly who? Jezebel. So Jehu is on the hunt now. He's taking care of Ahab's family, which is where Joram come from, Jezebel, mother, etc. So now we get down to chapter 10, and we're going to pick up. Ahab had 70 sons in Samaria. If you read this as a text critic would read it, 70 sons in Samaria, and then when we get farther down, he had sons in another location. Now, that doesn't mean that they are all his kids by a wife or a concubine. Remember that we have talked in here about how in Jewish culture in this period of time that grandfathers can refer to grandsons as sons and up and down the lineage way. But if you just look at it, that Ahab in some form had 70 male heirs, and Jehu wrote letters and sent to Samaria unto the rulers of Jezreel, to the elders, and to them that brought up Ahab's children, saying, where is Samaria, by the way? If we got a map, describe where Samaria is. And we talk about it quite a bit when we get to the New Testament. Just above the southern kingdom. In other words, if you've got Jerusalem here, which is in Judah, which is the southern kingdom, if you were to go north to Galilee, what would you find in between? Samaria. So we're looking at a short distance there, that's Samaria. And here he had sent that letter, and what he said was, now as soon as this letter come to you, seeing your master's sons are with you, and there are with you chariots and horses, a fenced city also, and armor, look even out the best and meetest of your master's sons, and set him on his father's throne, and fight for your master's house. But they were exceedingly afraid, and said, behold, 2 kings stood not before him. How then shall we stand? Now this to me is a fairly key verse, because he is sending a letter to some people in Samaria telling them to appoint somebody as king and take care of the rest. And when they say that 2 kings did not stand, what is the meaning of that? What had Jehu already done that we just talked about. He killed a former king, Joram, the one that he took over from. That was the king of the north. At that time, who was the king of the south? Ahaziah. Who was Ahaziah? Anyway, so we don't get confused with all the names, what happened was that Jehu, because the king of the south and king of the north had made an allegiance or an alliance and had gone up to fight in Syria, what happened was Jehu wound up killing Joram and killing the king of the south. So in verse 4 here, when it says that two kings stood before him or do not stand, that just means that he had already disposed of two kings. And now, if he has done that, what makes us so special that he's not going to come down here and take care of us? And he that was over the house, and he that was over the city, the elders also, and the bringers up of the children, sent to Jehu, saying, We are thy servants, and will do all that thou shalt bid us. We will not make any king. Do thou that which is good in thine eyes. Sounds like they're playing a little politics here, doesn't it? Hey, we don't want to do anything on our own. We're good folks. We'll do whatever you tell us to do. We want to be on your good side. Then he wrote a letter the second time to them, saying, If ye be mine, and if ye will hearken unto my voice, take the heads of the men, your master's sons, and come to me to Jezreel by tomorrow this time. So now he switched gears a little bit, didn't he? Didn't tell them to make a king, told them to do what? Kill them all, huh? Come see me with heads. Now the king's sons, being 70 persons, were with the great men of the city, which brought them up. They've used that phrase a couple of times here, that the people brought up the sons of the king. What does that tell you, or what do you think was going on in their minds? In other words, they were close to him. It wasn't like they'd just go out and kill 70 strangers. It's kill 70 people that you have not only know their names of, but that you have been associated with, that you know, that are close to you. And it came to pass when the letter came to them that they took the king's sons and slew 70 persons and put their heads in baskets and sent them to Jezreel. Now, normally, in that period of time when people kill people for vengeance and things like that, and there was a lot of beheading going on in ancient times. But how did they normally proceed to take that head to the king or display it? Grab it by the hair of the head and say, Here, what is special on this occasion? Put them in baskets. There were 70 heads. There were a lot of heads. But do you think that maybe it was because that they knew them and really didn't want to do it? It wasn't like they were bragging about doing it. It was, we're going to do what you said, but let's kind of be gentle with it. There's no way to be gentle with beheading, but I think you get where I'm going with it. And there came a messenger and told him, saying, They have brought the heads of the king's sons. And he said, Lay them in 2 heaps at the entering of the gate until the morning. What would be the significance of making 2 piles instead of just 1 heap? You either got one great big heap or you got two smaller heaps. I think then there no place says this, no place at all, but in some of the rabbinical writings and all, they surmise that they put a heap on either side of the gate. You know, two small piles, one on either side of the gate, which would get right back to what you said. If you got one big pile here, you can sort of look this way as you go by, but if you got a pile here and a pile here as you go through the gate, you're trapped. You're going to see it. And what was the significance of putting the heads at the gate? To be seen. And what would a sight like that cause you to do or to think, huh? Strike fear in you. If you're going to pass a pile of bones that something's happened, your first thought is, whoa, I got to be on my best behavior here, or I might be added to that heap. We can sort of look at the same thing. I'm trying to remember the exact situation now and the names, and it escapes me. But what about the fellow that his concubine was mistreated when they went to the city and died, and he wound up cutting her up into 12 pieces, sending her body through the land? What was the reason for that? Send the message. Send the message. Verse 9, and it came to pass in the morning that he went out and stood and said to all the people, ye be righteous. Behold, I conspired against my master and slew him. Now, who was his master at this time? The previous king, Joram. I conspired against my master and killed him. But who slew all these? What is he attempting to do? I'm sorry? Put the blame on somebody else, or at least say, I didn't do it. And he knows who did it, and he said they were righteous in doing it. And then he follows that up in the next verse by trying to justify it. Know not that there shall fall into the earth nothing of the word of the Lord, which the Lord spake concerning the house of Ahab, for the Lord hath done that which he spake by his servant Elijah. Meaning it was a current term that military sometimes uses or government uses. It was a sanctioned hit, meaning it was a legal thing. God said that this was going to happen. So you are righteous by fulfilling God's desire. And it wasn't me, I'm just the messenger. Pardon? That's quite true. But doesn't it appear that that's what he's attempting to do here? So Jehu slew all that remained of the house of Ahab in Jezreel, and all his great men and his kinfolks and his priests, until he left him none remaining. Now the priest apparently that he kills here is not the priest of Baal that he kills later, Mattan, but another one. Verse 12, and he arose and departed and came to Samaria. And as he was at the shearing house in the way, Jehu met with the brethren of Ahaziah, king of Judah, and said, who are ye? And they answered, we are the brethren of Ahaziah, and we go down to salute the children of the king and the children of the queen. And he said, take them alive. And they took them alive and slew them at the pit of the shearing house, even 42 men. Neither left he any of them. Jehu's kind of a bad fellow, isn't he? He kills everybody he comes across. Okay, old-fashioned cleansing, yes, sir. It is harsh to think in those terms, but that is correct. If we go back and look at some American history, if we go back to the war between the states, what infuriated the South the most, but at the same time got their attention? And we will talk about a fellow by the name of Sherman. When he got to Atlanta and headed east, what did he do? Razed everything, burnt everything behind him, cleared it out, left nothing behind. Sort of gets the message out, doesn't it? And it leaves nothing for people to pick up and go with. So, but like Brother Cox said, that's a cleansing that's taking place, making sure all the people are out of the way. And we're going to find this happening again in the next chapter with somebody in the South. And when he was departed hence, he lighted on Jehonadab, the son of Rechab, coming to meet him, and he saluted him and said to him, is thy heart right, as my heart is right with thy heart? And Jehonadab answered, it is. If it be, give me thine hand. And he gave him his hand, and he took him up into the chariot, and he said, come with me and see my zeal for the Lord. So they made him ride in his chariot. And when he came to Samaria, he slew all that remained unto Ahab in Samaria until he had destroyed him, according to the saying of the Lord, which he spake to Elijah. And Jehu gathered all the people together and said unto them, Ahab served Baal a little, but Jehu shall serve him much. So Jehu wasn't even making an attempt to go back to true worship, Israelite worship. He's going, and what makes it so bad is when he said that Ahab had served Baal a little. As a reminder, what had Ahab done to serve Baal? Would we consider it a little today? I would consider it a lot when you go in and start building Baal worship places on top of. If you look at Jerusalem right now, where is the main Muslim temple? Where does it sit? It's the Temple Mount, which used to be what? I'm sorry? Right on top of the Christian worship. So, yeah. Now therefore call unto me all the prophets of Baal, all his servants and all his priests, let none be wanting, for I have a great sacrifice to do to Baal. Whosoever shall be wanting, he shall not live. But Jehu did in subtlety to the intent that he might destroy the worshipers of Baal. See, I misled you. I played the devil's advocate, but nobody caught it when I said that Jehu, when he said he would serve him much, was going to be worse. Somebody should have caught that. Alyssa did, just didn't say anything. Well, I told you last week, there's a lot of times I put on that little pointed hat to do things. Jehu said, proclaim a solemn assembly for Baal, and they proclaimed it. And Jehu sent through all Israel, and all the worshipers of Baal came, so that there was not a man left that came not. And they came into the house of Baal, and the house of Baal was full from one end to the other. And he said unto him that was over the vestry, bring forth vestments for all the worshipers of Baal. And he brought them forth vestments. And Jehu went, and Jehonadab, the son of Rechab, into the house of Baal, and said unto the worshipers of Baal, search and look that there be here with you none of the servants of the Lord, but the worshipers of Baal only. Now this is important, because what is he making sure of? And there's two things that's going to take place here. Make sure that they don't kill the wrong person. Make sure it's only the Baal worshipers. Well, now, how come the Baal worshipers didn't catch on to what was going on? I'm sorry? The Baal worshipers thought that they were in good shape. It was customary in those days to not let people of another religious group in, because they didn't want it contaminated. So by him saying this, it was as though he was making sure that the assembly was pure, and not his real reason of making sure that the innocents were left outside. And when they went in to offer sacrifice and burnt offerings, Jehu appointed 80 men without, and said, if any of the men whom I have brought into your hands escape, he that letteth him go, his life shall be for the life of him. We find this in Roman history when we get to the army, when somebody's put in charge. If you're put in charge of a prisoner and he escapes, you give your life for that prisoner's life. I'm sorry? Like the jailer was about to kill himself. Came to pass, as soon as he had made an end of offering the burnt offering, that Jehu said to the guard and to the captains, go in and slay them, let none come forth, that they smote them with the edge of the sword. And the guard and the captains cast them out, and went to the city of Baal. And they brought forth the images out of the house of Baal, and burned them. Break down the images of Baal, and break down the house of Baal, and made it a drought house unto this day. Thus Jehu destroyed Baal out of Israel. Sounds good so far, don't it? It's a little catch, though. Howbeit, from the sins of Jeroboam, the sons of Nebat, who made Israel to sin, Jehu departed not from after them, to wit, the golden calves that were in Bethel and that were in Dan. So even though he got rid of Baal worship, did he go back to true worship? And the answer is no. He followed Jeroboam's path with the golden calves. And the Lord said unto Jehu, because thou hast done well in executing that which is right in mine eyes, and thou hast done unto the house of Ahab according to all that was in mine heart, the children of the 4th generation shall sit on the throne of Israel. But Jehu took no heed to walk in the law of the Lord, God of Israel, with all his heart, for he departed not from the sins of Jeroboam, which made Israel to sin. In those days the Lord began to cut Israel short, and Hazael smote them in all the coast of Israel. Who is Hazael? We mentioned him last week also. King of Syria. Where is Syria in relationship on our map to the 10 northern tribes? We know where the southern tribe is. Now we got the 10 northern tribes. Where is Syria in relationship to those? up north. If you're going north of the 10 tribes, over on the coastline here where you've got Sidon and Tyre, which is Phoenician, then right over here would be Syria. So he's the king of Syria. And from Jordan eastward, all the land of Gilead, the Gadites, the Reubenites, and the Manassites, from Aroer, which is by the river Arnon, even Gilead and Bashan. Now the rest of the acts of Jehu and all that he did and all his might, are they not written in the books of the chronicles of the kings of Israel? And Jehu slept with his fathers, and they buried him in Samaria, and Jehoahaz his son reigned in his stead. And at that time Jehu reigned over Israel, and Samaria was 28 years. So he takes over somewhere around 841 BC, reigns 28 years, which means that we're now down to about 814, but he covered that period of time, and that was in the north. Now there's going to be a couple of kings in the south during this period of time, and we're going to get to part of that when we get to chapter 11. But if you had followed along with your list of questions, all 10 questions would have been answered in these in chapter 10. Is there any questions or comments about chapter 10 that we need to look at some more? Okay. Let's go to chapter 11, and we're going to be dealing with Adaliah, which is going to be ruler in the south. And I call it ruler because is Adaliah a king? She's female. Who exactly is Adaliah? Daughter of Ahab. Well, now wait. Ahab was from the northern tribe. We're dealing with the southern tribe. If we go back a few weeks, we understand how Ahab's daughter, who married her? Jehoshaphat. And then he had these kids by her. And now it comes down to the last one only ruled for a year because he was so evil, and he was one that Jehu had killed. So Jehu takes in about 841 on down, and Adaliah starts about 841, just as soon as her son is killed that was king. And what's one of the first things that she does? When Adaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, and remember Ahaziah here also goes by a couple of other names, but he's the one that we was talking about in previous chapters, saw that her son was dead, she arose and destroyed all the royal seed. What does that phrase mean, that she destroyed the royal seed? By the way, she missed one, but anyway. Killed everybody that was in line for the throne. Sounds a lot like Jehu, and what makes it even worse, I guess, is that she was a queen. Her son was a king. If we're dealing with the southern kingdom as we are, and we said that everything in the southern kingdom remained in the same lineage, what does that mean that she is doing by killing royal seed, royal heirs to the throne? Killing her own kinfolks, killing her, again, getting rid of the competition. That was normal for her and her upbringing because of Ahab and who was mother? Jezebel. So but Jehoshaphat, the daughter of King Joram, sister of Ahaziah, took Joash, the son of Ahaziah, and stole him from the king's sons, which were slain, and they hid him, even him and his nurse, in the bedchamber from Adaliah, so that he was not slain. So she didn't get all her competition out of the way. There's still one here. Apparently, he was the youngest, because later on we're going to find out how old he was when he took the throne, how long he remained hidden. So at the very least, he was an infant at the time. So that's where I'm drawing the conclusion that he was the youngest. So, but verse 3 says, and he was with her, hid in the house of the Lord 6 years. And Adaliah did reign over the land. So she sort of usurped the authority by killing those that had the right to the throne. But there's one left. And the 7th year, Jehoiada sent and fetched the rulers over hundreds with the captains and the guard, and brought them to him in the house of the Lord, and made a covenant with them, and took an oath with them in all the house of the Lord, and showed them the king's son. How old is he at this point? If he had been hidden 6 years, it's very likely that he's in the neighborhood of, well, we'll find out later exactly how old he is, but I'm going to tell you, he's 7 years old. Why are they now exposing him? If he had been hidden 6 years, was a year old when he went into hiding, thereabouts, why are they now exposing him? It's a very logical reason. I'm running out of time, so we're going to talk about this and then read some of it. But what they're doing is they have had it with Adaliah. They're about to get rid of her. And who is the only heir to go that would be legal to go on the throne? And that would be this young man at the age of 7. Is he prepared for the throne at the age of 7? No way. But we see through both Egyptian history and other ancient histories, in the line of things, people are king based on birth, not based on acquiring knowledge or skills to do the job. It's strictly a birthright. So here they're about to getting set up to get rid of her. So now they bring out and show who is the legal heir to the throne. And he commanded them, saying, this is the thing that ye shall do. A third part of you that enter on the Sabbath shall... My peepers are not working just right. Hang on. And a third part shall... and he commanded them, saying, this is the thing that ye shall do. A third part of you that enter in on the Sabbath shall even be keepers of the watch of the king's house. A third part shall be at the gate of Sur, and a third part at the gate behind the guard. So shall ye keep the watch of the house, that it be not broken down. And 2 parts of all you that go forth on the Sabbath, even they shall keep the watch of the house of the Lord about the king. So they talk kind of strange here when they're talking about a third part and a third part and 2 parts. But in essence, there are 5 groups that are in play at this time. 3 doing this, 2 doing that. And ye shall compass the king round about, every man with his weapon in his hand, and he that cometh within the ranges, let him be slain, and be ye with the king as he goeth out and as he cometh in. Got a 7-year-old that's surrounded by armed bodyguards. And when they talk about range, that just means ranks, with that they don't get through the ranks. We're going to come up to other words here later that sort of means runner. I don't think they do it much anymore, but if you recall back in the 60s, for instance, when John F. Kennedy was in Texas in a convertible, that there was people on the ground with their hand on the vehicle running with it before he was shot. Those are called runners, but they're actually armed guards. So similar things are taking place here, that the king, this young boy, has been surrounded and protected. And the captains over the hundreds did according to all that Jehoiada the priest commanded, and they took every man his men that were to come in on the Sabbath with them, that they should go out on the Sabbath and came to Jehoiada the priest. And to the captains over hundreds did the priest give King David spears and shields that were in the temple of the Lord. That's kind of interesting that all this stuff that David had collected and had made, now they're going to protect one of his offspring. And the guard stood, every man with his weapon in his hand, round about the king, from the right corner of the temple to the left corner of the temple, along by the altar in the temple. And he brought forth the king's son and put the crown upon him and gave him the testimony. And they made him king and anointed him, and they clapped their hands and said, God save the king. What does it mean they put a crown on his head, which is, in essence, is the symbol of authority, but then they gave him the testimony? What is another word for testimony? I'm sorry? Yeah, maybe I asked that question wrong. Gave him the law. The testimony is the law. And by phrasing it this way, in my opinion anyway, they gave him the symbol of authority, and they gave him the law that he was to follow, back to the line, through the line of David. They gave him his marching orders, so to speak. Both physical and spiritual authority, correct. And when Athaliah heard the noise of the guard and of the people, she came to the people into the temple of the Lord. And when she looked, behold, the king stood by a pillar, and as the manner was, and the princes and trumpeters by the king, and all the people of the land rejoiced and blew trumpets. And Athaliah rent her clothes and cried, treason, treason. Why would she proclaim that treason was being committed? Treason against her, and not necessarily the kingdom itself. But at this point, by her saying that, do you think that she even knew that Joash had been alive all these years? She would have tried to kill him, wouldn't she? But now, with them bringing him out in full view, with basically 5 legions of, not legions, but 5 groups, about 500 men guarding him, she's kind of put in a box, isn't she? There's not much she can do. The rightful king is now anointed, and what's left for her? Verse 15, but Jehoiada the priest commanded the captains of the hundreds, the officers of the host, and said unto them, have her forth without the ranges, and him that followeth her kill with the sword. For the priest had said, let her not be slain in the house of the Lord. So they already knew that they were going to kill her. They just wasn't going to do it in the house of the Lord. They was going to get her and anyone that was following her, still on her side, get them out of the house and take care of business. And the bell rang, and that's just about the rest of the verses then take it down to the point where she was killed. Technically, the rightful heir is now king over the southern portion of Judah, and he was 7 years old when he began to reign. Thank y'all so much for your attention and your comments.